Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am incredibly excited to dive into this with you because today we're zooming out. We're taking a wide angle look at the massive macroeconomic forces and trends that are literally dictating global wealth right now. We aren't just looking at random, isolated data points here, we're mapping out the overarching economic forces shaping the future. By analyzing key indicators, from your everyday costs all the way up to prime international real estate, we're going to build a really clear, comprehensive picture of where capital is flowing today. And honestly, more importantly, we'll see exactly where it's heading next.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the Global Cost Index. Second, real estate wealth disparities. Third, the renter and owner divide. Fourth, emerging future wealth trends. And fifth, shaping your financial future. We're going from everyday global costs right down to the specific habits you're going to need for 2026. All right, Section 1, the Global Cost Index, the everyday anchor. So to truly wrap our heads around global macroeconomics, we really have to look at purchasing power parity through an everyday lens, something highly relatable. So I want you to think about this for a second. How much does a men's haircut cost in your capital city? It seems like a super simple, almost trivial question, right? But actually, the cost of a standard men's haircut is a phenomenal, tangible metric for global inflation, labor costs, and your baseline purchasing power. It completely strips away all that complex jargon of international finance and puts the global economy into terms we literally interact with all the time. Just look at these staggering extremes. This brilliantly illustrates the vast differences in global economies using just the cost of that one simple service. The contrast is absolutely wild. On the high end, a standard haircut in Norway's capital will set you back $64.50. In the US, it averages around $44. But down at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, that same service in Zambia costs just $1.65. I mean, we are talking about staggering extremes for the exact same expenditure of human labor and time. It perfectly highlights the massive baseline disparities in global living standards. And when we look across the middle spectrum of this data, we see the true sliding scale of the global cost index. Japan sits high at $56, while the UK drops to around $35. Then we cross into the 20s with Italy at $23, dip under $10 in Mexico at $9.66, and reach about $5 in India. What this data clearly tells us is that your economic baseline, just the cost of existing and maintaining a standard of living, is heavily dictated by geographical and macroeconomic forces that are frankly entirely outside of your immediate control. Moving on to Section 2, real estate wealth disparities, scaling wealth geographically. Now that we've looked at everyday costs at the bottom of the economic ladder, let's jump up to the highest levels of global capital, prime international real estate. Now, what's really interesting about this information is the extreme spatial constraint of modern wealth. 1 million US dollars buys you vastly different realities depending on where you are. In Monaco, $1 million gets you a mere 16 square meters. Honestly, that's basically a small bedroom. Compare that to Dubai, where you get 91 square meters, or Mumbai, where you can grab 103 square meters. This proves that at the highest tiers, wealth is heavily penalized by geography. The closer you get to global capital hubs, the less intrinsic physical space your money actually holds. Let's flesh out the middle of that market a bit using data from the Knight Frank Wealth Report. This shows exactly where global capital is concentrated. Hong Kong is fiercely competitive. $1 million buys you just 22 square meters there. New York gets you 34, Paris 40, and Sydney 43. Even as we expand out to Miami at 60 or Tokyo at 64, the undeniable reality is that in major economic hubs, $1 million buys incredibly little physical space. Real estate in these zones, it's no longer just shelter. It is a highly concentrated financial asset class used for parking global wealth. Which brings us to Section 3, the renter and owner divide, the societal shift. You see, these massive real estate disparities we just looked at aren't just fascinating numbers. They are directly causing a foundational shift in society's class structures across the globe. There is a brutal truth we simply have to face. The middle class is now split into renters and owners. This functions as a major economic indicator for our future. The traditional idea of a unified middle class, it's fracturing. The new dividing line in modern economics is strictly drawn by asset ownership.
So the crucial point is how these two distinct groups experience the economic realities we've just analyzed. Renters face the absolute brunt of global cost indexes. They're vulnerable to rising everyday costs, like those haircuts we discussed earlier, while simultaneously paying rising rents dictated by the market. Owners, on the flip side, hold those prime property assets. Their wealth inherently scales with inflation. As the cost of living goes up, the value of their fixed assets goes up right along with it, creating this continuously expanding chasm between the two sides.
Look, confronting these structural realities can be incredibly tough. It touches on what we can categorize as 15 brutal truths people don't want to hear. But acknowledging these facts impartially is an absolutely crucial step. You really cannot understand the economic forces shaping your future if you refuse to look clearly at the dividing lines shaping the present. Let's pivot to Section 4, Emerging Future Wealth Trends, Following the Capital to 2026. This is where we look ahead. We're exploring where capital is actively flowing right now and how emerging industries are preparing to create the next generation of millionaires by 2026. I absolutely love this insight. Video games IP is the new comic book IP. Over the last decade, we all watched comic book intellectual property dominate the global box office and merchandise markets, making billions. Well, the data points strongly to video game IP taking that exact mantle. This is a prime example of an emerging trend that will entirely dictate entertainment, culture, and intellectual property wealth over the next 10 years. It's a massive shift in where consumer attention and dollars are heading. To prepare for the economy of 2026, you've got to track specific future wealth vectors. It's about identifying the 10 profitable side hustles well before they become saturated. It requires adopting the 15 daily habits that wealthy individuals are actively cultivating right now for the future landscape. You need to keep a close eye on the 10 specific industries currently making millionaires and actively ride the 15 macroeconomic trends making people rich over the next decade. Success here is all about strategic anticipation, not reaction.
And finally, Section 5, Shaping Your Financial Future, Translating Macro to Micro.
This is where we translate these massive macroeconomic forces down into your personal finance goals and your daily decisions. $100,000. Achieving your first 100K is a monumental milestone. But here's the secret. It isn't just about the money itself. Earning your first $100,000 is actually about proving that you understand the global forces we've covered today and that you know how to position yourself correctly within them. Think of it as a proof of concept for your financial literacy. Let's move to and see how this builds into your final action plan. Step 1. Understand global costs and your personal purchasing power baseline. Step 2. Recognize the owner divide. You must strategically aim to acquire assets, not just earn an income. Step 3. Adopt those 2026 wealth habits today to outpace the shifting market. And Step 4. Start a business. Whether it's a side hustle or tapping into a trend like video game IP, creating your own equity is the ultimate shield against global inflation.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Which side of these economic trends are you preparing for? The macroeconomic forces shaping our future are already in motion. The divide between asset owners and renters is widening every day, and new industries are rising rapidly. The information is out there. It's entirely up to you how you use it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it brought you some incredible clarity today. Take these insights, apply them to your own financial roadmap, and I will see you in the next one.